Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress. I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in. Revealing and Exposing the Vatican Jesuit-Led New World Order. The book is entitled Codeword Barbelon. The full title is Codeword Barbelon, 666, Danger in the Vatican, The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination by P.D. Stuart. This is book one of a two-book series, the second of which is now available, and I'm currently reading on my own after the program. And I highly recommend these two books. It's a veritable one-stop shop. It has everything we need to know to comprehend what is happening in the world today. And you can get both of these books at www.luxverbi.org. Now I'll spell it. LUXVERBI.org. luxverbi.org. Stop in the website and order your books, and buy two copies while you're at it. One for you to read and study for yourself, and one to share with someone else who will put it to good use. We're going to pick up in a new chapter this morning. If you're reading along in your book, it's page 357, and it's chapter 36, and it is entitled Cecil Rhodes, the Global Manipulator. Now, this morning we're going to talk about one of the most powerful secret societies on the earth and who started it and what its purpose is. It's called the Rhodes Scholarship. And I'm anxious to get started in this book this morning. It begins with a quote from Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter in 1952. He said this: "The real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise power from behind the scenes." Another quote from FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover says this, quote, "They have infiltrated every conceivable sphere of activity: youth groups, radio, television, and motion picture industries, church, school, educational and cultural groups, the press, nationality minority groups, and civil and political units," unquote. That again from FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Now, to begin the text of the book, the author P.D. Stuart writes, "Has it ever been your good fortune, kind reader, to make a discovery that demystified a state of affairs which until then you somehow sensed to be of importance, but about which you were totally perplexed? Well, that was my experience in the latter stages of writing this book. While doing incidental research on the stellar political career of former U.S. President Bill Clinton, details of two organizations, one called the Round Table and the other the Rhodes Scholarship Foundation, came to my attention. These, for some unknown reason, I suspected were not what they appeared to be. To my surprise, I was right. My research led to discoveries about the Rhodes Scholarship and the major influence of the Jesuits in its creation and on its patron, Cecil Rhodes. A man as important as Cecil Rhodes warrants something more than a footnote in a book on the history and workings of the secret societies. Everyone knows that the famous founder of the Rhodes Scholarship was Cecil Rhodes, who lived from 1853 to 1902, a gold and diamond magnate. What is not so well known is that Rhodes was also the mastermind behind an organization called the Round Table, or the Round Table of Piscio Secreta, which had its initial roots in England. Rhodes an Englishman, after making his fortune in Africa, became Prime Minister of the Cape Colony, Africa, from 1890 to 1896. In fact, it was after him that the country of Rhodesia, now divided into Zambia and Zimbabwe, was named. The Rhodes family crest suggests he was also a Knight of Malta. Interestingly, the proper name for a Knights Templar Lodge was a round table. And as everyone knows, the Knights of Malta inherited the wealth of the Knights Templars, the prototype of the Jesuits. In his goal of creating the Round Table and the Rhodes Scholarship, Mr. Rhodes was aided by his fellow Lord Alfred Milner from 1854 to 1925. It says Milner spent his early years in Germany, and at that time it was the home of the Illuminati, before he moved to England in 1869. Milner was the master-elect of the New Welcome Lodge, and a Masonic lodge called the New Welcome Lodge. And it says, like Rhodes, he attended Oxford University, and his role was to recruit young men into the Rhodes scheme. As we will shortly see, President Bill Clinton was one of Milner's young men. The meaning of this term will shortly become apparent. Cecil Rhodes' many biographers have highly described him as a colossus, but the source of his power and his great success is not at all obvious or addressed. As Miles F. Shore wrote, quote, he was an indifferent student, of modest abilities, who would probably not have qualified for one of his own scholarships, unquote. Yet Sarah Millen, Rhodes' biographer, tells us, quote, the government of the world was Rhodes' simple desire, unquote. How then did Mr. Rhodes achieve such success? Harry Truman once said that the only thing new in the world is the history you don't know. We must therefore conduct a detective-like investigation into the real power behind the man Cecil Rhodes. A fact which is not widely known is that Mr. Rhodes' Round Table was the British chapter of the Illuminati of 1776, in the same way as Skull and Bones is the American chapter. The purpose of the Round Table, says Gary Allen, was that of a, quote, secret society dedicated to establishing a world government, unquote, that would select its leaders for a, quote, new world order, unquote. Mr. Rhodes' commitment to the establishment of a world government was set down in a series of wills. Dr. Frank Adelot, the best-known scholar on the Rhodes wills, says in his book American Rhodes Scholarships, quote, the 7 wills which Cecil Rhodes made constitute a kind of spiritual autobiography. Best known are the first, or the Secret Society will, and the last, which established the Rhodes Scholarships, unquote. Mr. Adelot then adds this important footnote, quote, Rhodes' Confession of Faith enlarges upon these ideas. The model for this proposed secret society was the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, though he, that is, Rhodes, mentions also Masons. Okay, unquote. That's Freemasonry. So, he's modeling it after the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order. And he's going to use Freemasonry. Now, we've talked about this before, the link between Jesuitism and Freemasonry. And now we're going to discuss how that blending took place. Remember that at the time of the suppression of the Jesuits in 1773, 3 years later, a Jesuit priest by the name of Adam Weishaupt created an underground organization so that the suppressed Jesuits could continue their nefarious efforts to build a new world order, a global government. That was called the Illuminati. And Cecil Rhodes is founding a secret society just like the Jesuit order, and is going to use Freemasonry to cloak it. And that's exactly what Adam Weishaupt did with his Illuminati. He used Freemasonry to cloak that too. So we're going to see some similarities here. And it says, why did Rhodes model his secret society after the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus? Cecil Rhodes' collaborator and mentor and well-known journalist William Thomas Stead writes that Rhodes was a, quote, listen to this, a gray archangel crossed with a Jesuit who was so devoted to his ends that almost all means were to him indifferent, excepting insofar as they helped him to attain his goal, unquote. Is this just figurative language on Stead's part in referring to Rhodes as being, quote, an archangel crossed with a Jesuit, unquote, or is this symbolic language? Let us see. Firstly, in the book A Jesuit Tale by John F. Shackleton, it tells us that Laius, a Jesuit, was hidden inside the statue of an archangel. Also, when the Jesuit takes his oath, he swears in the name of the, quote, blessed Michael, the archangel, unquote, and the early Jesuits actually believed in the cult of the seven archangel. So the use of archangel by Stead might well be a Jesuit code word. Secondly, Stead tells us, quote, when Mr. Rhodes left England in February of 1895, he was at the zenith of his power. Every obstacle seemed to bend before his determined will, unquote. According to Stead, Rhodes was a globalist who was determined to take control of America. Said Rhodes, quote, the only thing feasible to carry this idea out is a secret society gradually absorbing the wealth of the world, unquote. To achieve this objective, Rhodes contrived with his collaborators, Stead and others, to create a secret society that, in his own words, could be made presentable to the public without in any way revealing the esoteric truth that lay behind, unquote. To do this, to make this secret society presentable to the public, Rhodes would use several wills. His first will was in 1877. The second was in 1882. The third in 1888. The fourth in 1891, and his fifth in 1893, and the sixth and last will in 1899. And some say they were even 7 wills. Now the question is, what possessed Rhodes to dream up the idea of taking over America and the world? In other words, what was his real agenda? Was he working of his own volition or on the orders of a quote-unquote invisible superior? Stead gives us a big clue. He writes, quote, imagine Rhodes as Erasmus in the skin of Loyola, and you'll have some idea of the standpoint of Mr. Rhodes, unquote. Loyola, you will recall, was the first and most well-known Jesuit general. It was Ignatius Loyola who said, quote, we are called to win to God not only a single nation, a single country, but all nations, all the kingdoms of the world, unquote. And it was another of Loyola's acolytes, Adam Weishaupt, an influential Jesuit priest who schemed with several ex-Jesuits, says many researchers, in 1776 to retake control of the world after the order was suppressed in 1773. Is there a hidden connection here? Next, on page 64, Stead reveals that Rhodes wrote him in a letter dated 1891 about setting up a secret society as follows, quote, please remember the key of my discussion with you as a society copied from the Jesuits as to organization, unquote. Steed further states, quote, he, meaning Rhodes, thought much of the marvelous career of Loyola, the man who underpinned the tottering foundations of the Catholic Church and reestablished them on the rock of St. Peter, unquote. Now, certainly before I continue, the tottering foundations of the Roman Catholic Church was a result of the Protestant Reformation. That is what put the Roman Catholic Church's foundation on very shaky ground. And it says that Ignatius Loyola, the Jesuit general, put the tottering foundations of the Roman Catholic Church back upon the rock of St. Peter. Now, who, according to the Roman Catholic Church, is the rock of St. Peter? It's the Pope. So he is establishing the temporal power of the Pope in the world. And he's also waging a war of extermination against Protestantism. Okay, it's a twofold battle. First, you must destroy the truth, that is, the Bible, primarily, because that's what fueled the Protestant Reformation, and then to elevate the papacy to world supremacy. And you'll find that embodied in the extreme oath of the Jesuits. And if you haven't read it for a while, it would be a good idea to refresh your memory. Now, continuing with the text, it says, why did Steed, Rhodes' closest collaborator, say we should, quote, imagine Mr. Rhodes as Erasmus in the skin of Loyola? And you'll have some idea of the standpoint of Mr. Rhodes. What was the standpoint of Mr. Rhodes? On page 66 of his commentary on Rhodes' last will, Steed explains that Mr. Rhodes wanted a, quote, secret society organized like Loyola's, like the Jesuit order. Now remember, Steed was not only Rhodes' collaborator, but also his mentor. The question is, why was Mr. Rhodes so enamored with, so bewitched, fascinated, and charmed by Ignatius Loyola and his Jesuit order? We shall soon have a solid answer to that question. A second question of equal importance is by what means would Mr. Rhodes create this powerful secret society that would be presentable, not cause alarm to the public? We're told, and it is well documented, that Rhodes put his enormous and ill-gotten gold and diamonds fortune to work on a plan to infiltrate and take control of the American empire. That Rhodes succeeded in this design is seen from the fact that the presence of Rhodes Scholarship alumni in past and present American government administrations is so pervasive. This fact has prompted many observers to say that the Rhodes Scholarship scheme have produced in America, quote, a permanent party of government in law, business, intelligence, diplomacy, and in the military, unquote. We know, for example, that there were excessive numbers of Rhodes Scholars in the Kennedy administration, unquote. But how did he succeed at this? Now, under the subtitle, The Brief History of the Rhodes Secret Society, the author writes, on February 5, 1891, Rhodes and two other influential men formed the secret society called the Round Table, which Rhodes had been scheming for 16 years. One of the men was William T. Steed, quote, probably the most sensational journalist of the day, unquote. Notice he picked a journalist. It says the third was Reginald Balliol Bret. Reginald Balliol Bret, later known as Lord Esher, friend and confidant of Queen Victoria, and later to be the most influential advisor of King Edward VII and King George V, unquote. So here we have the press and blue blood mixing, getting involved with this. And it says Rhodes and his helpers also formed a secret society called the Circle of Initiates, along with several other semi-secret front organizations, chief of which was a scholarship fund. The following is a quote from the Jesuit professor Carroll Quigley, who is now deceased, who was Bill Clinton's mentor, while the latter, that is Bill Clinton, was a student at the Jesuit-owned Georgetown University. Quigley gives this insight into the background of Lord Esher, the Queen's confidant. Quote, Bret, who succeeded his father as Viscount Esher in 1899, is one of the most influential and one of the least known men in British politics in the last 2 generations. His importance could be judged better by the positions he refused than by those he held during his long life, which ran from 1852 to 1930. Escher's reasons for refusing these positions were twofold. He wanted to work behind the scenes rather than in the public view, and his work in secret was so important and so influential that any public post would have meant a reduction of his power. Escher was probably the most important advisor on political matters to Queen Victoria, King Edward VII, and King George V, unquote. Now, what was it J. Edgar Hoover said? The power operates in secret? No, that was Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter. He said the real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise power from behind the scenes. Now we know why, where it got its idea. They have more power if they're not limited by the constraints of public office. And public offices are normally elected offices. In other words, you can oust them if they don't please the people. But this shrewd individual operated behind the scenes without any of the constraints of a public office and without being elected. He's an advisor, very powerful. And that's the same type of role that the Jesuit priests operate in this country. They have no public political office. They have no political constraints. They can do whatever they want because they operate behind the scenes and they don't draw attention to themselves. They are advisors. That's how the Jesuits operate. Now, continuing, it says what Carroll Quigley writes next is even more revealing. Quote, in South America, Garrett, another of Rhodes' collaborators, was on most intimate personal relationships with Rhodes. That Garrett knew of the secret society is recorded by Garrett himself in an article which he published in the Contemporary Review after Rhodes' death in 1902. The words in which Garrett made this last revelation are of some significance. He spoke of that idea of a sort of Jesuit-like secret society. Again, we're talking about the Round Table, a secret society built after the fashion of the Jesuit order for the same goal, to achieve a global government for the Pope. Cecil Rhodes. We'll continue with the discussion when we get back from the break. You're listening to the Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Have you seen the Left Behind movies? Have you read the Left Behind fictional book series? Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. Because they see the world stage shaping to fulfill what they have been led to believe is sound biblical interpretation, a Left Behind rapture scenario, this false view of prophecy is reinforced in the mind, not only of its adherents, but also includes those who have been merely exposed to the specific media. Is it possible that false prophecy can be fulfilled? The rapture theories have always been in dispute. Pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib disputes have risen up in exclusively evangelical circles of recent history, so that when true believers don't suddenly disappear, this element will easily go by the wayside when all see a new Jewish temple begin to be built. Will this be part of the great delusion that will come upon the whole earth? It seems that this great prophetic delusion has already overcome practically the entire American evangelical and Christian world. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. To learn more, visit crosstheborder.org. That's CROSS, crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay, welcome back to the second half of Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. If you enjoy Inquisition Update, please support Inquisition Update by supporting FirstAmendmentRadio.com. We're continuing our discussion about Cecil Rhodes and his collaborators and his secret society known as the Round Table and the Rhodes Scholarship and what part it plays in the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. And he continues, perhaps this is a good time to say, perhaps this is a good time as any to reveal more about this man, Carroll Quigley, who lived from 1910 to 1977. Quigley graduated magna cum laude with a Master of Arts degree and a Ph.D. from Harvard. He was the youngest person to receive a Ph.D. from Harvard. After teaching at Harvard and Princeton, he went to the oldest Jesuit university in America, Georgetown, where for 28 consecutive years alumni selected him as the most influential professor. He became a highly respected professor at the Faculty of Foreign Service at Georgetown University and was also a consultant to the United States Department of Defense, the House Committee on Astronautics and Space Exploration, and to the U.S. Navy. We'll hear more from this knowledgeable and interesting man shortly. One of the greatest influences on Rhodes was the book by Winwood Reade, The Martyrdom of Man. Rhodes said of the book, quote, "It made me what I am," unquote. In that book, Reade wrote that there was no God and that the world should be run on the basis of social Darwinism, survival of the fittest, in other words. Reade also attacked traditional morality, advocating a secular humanism. Rhodes himself was widely believed to be a homosexual. Of significance, another of his favorite books included the works of classical Greek and Roman scholars. But it was the 6-volume work of Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire that was his favorite, which Rhodes read and reread. Why? Note the year. 1776. The founding of the Illuminati was the time in which this book was printed. Cecil Rhodes, a Freemason and a Jesuit, is the subtitle of the next portion of this chapter. That's right, Cecil Rhodes was a Freemason and a Jesuit. Although not widely publicized, Rhodes was a high-ranking Freemason. Shortly after arriving at Oxford, Rhodes was initiated into Freemasonry at the Apollo University Lodge, number 357. On April 17, 1877, he was raised to the degree of Master Mason in the same lodge. Rhodes also joined a Scottish Rite Lodge at Oxford called Prince Rose-Croix Lodge, number 30, and strangely, on one occasion, he casually revealed the satanic cult secrets of the 33rd degree. Thus, it seems Rhodes was himself initiated as a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason. What is significant about Rhodes' Masonic connection is that, like the Jesuit priest Adam Weishaupt, Rhodes, in successive wills, 6 or 8 in all, expressed his determination to set up a powerful secret society within Freemasonry to be based on the order of the Jesuits. Now, don't forget the significance of this. You know, many times when I am on amateur radio and other means of communication and I talk about Freemasonry, I'm attacked by Freemasons. How dare you speak so ill of Freemasonry? We were big in the founding of this country. We're a charitable organization. We don't deserve this condemnation. But remember, the Jesuit order was an underground for the Jesuits through the Illuminati. And also, Rhodes set up a secret Masonic order within Freemasonry that was fashioned after the Jesuit order. Okay? He just used an existing, publicly recognized secret society that was regarded by the public as altruistic and charitable and harmless, if not beneficial. All right? So this is how Cecil Rhodes created his secret society without raising the suspicions of the public. This is how he cloaked his organization. He simply injected it into Freemasonry that already existed, and Freemasonry becomes the cover for this Rhodes secret society. And this is why we always link Freemasonry with Jesuitism. All right, beginning again with this paragraph, it says, what is significant about Rhodes' Masonic connection is that, like the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, Rhodes, in successive wills, expressed his determination to set up a powerful secret society within Freemasonry to be based on the order of the Jesuits. And as we saw earlier, he openly expressed his admiration for the Jesuits, whom he said had achieved, quote-unquote, much good, despite what he cleverly termed their bad cause and bad leaders. Now, the author writes a little comment. He says, attacking your true allegiance is sometimes the best disguise. And obviously, referring to the Jesuits as having a bad cause and bad leaders is attacking his true alliance to disguise his loyalty to the Jesuits. And it says, and this is just exactly what Adam Weishaupt did in 1776 when he affected hatred for the Jesuit order. So they're cloaking their operation by cursing the Jesuit order, when in fact everything they do is to serve the Jesuit order. Now, in each of his successive wills, Cecil Rhodes refined his envisaged secret society. In his fourth will of June of 1888, Rhodes, in an accompanying letter, instructed Lord Nathaniel M. Rothschild. Now remember, the Rothschilds are the Vatican's bankers. The Vatican's bankers. We found that out when we read and studied the book Rulers of Evil by F. Tupper Saucy. Rhodes, in an accompanying letter, instructed Lord Nathaniel M. Rothschild, his collaborator and financier, to obtain the constitutions of the Jesuits and insert the words English Empire for the words Roman Catholic religion, unquote. Now, isn't it strange that Rhodes would approach the Vatican bankers, the Rothschilds, the Jewish Freemasonic Rothschild family, the guardians of the Vatican treasury, to obtain the constitutions of the Jesuits? How in the world would Rothschild have access to the constitutions of the Jesuits when there's such a secret document? And we need to learn from this. The Rothschilds, if they have access to the constitutions of the Jesuits, they must be Jesuits, wouldn't you think? Or at least close associates with the Jesuits? That's right. He asked Nathaniel Rothschild, his collaborator and financier, to obtain the constitutions of the Jesuits and insert English Empire for Roman Catholic religion. All right, just change the wording of the Constitution. And it says thus, all the Rhodes secret societies and associations have as their charter the Jesuit constitutions. This was the reason Mr. Cecil Rhodes read and reread Edward Gibbon's book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. According to Gibbon, both history and the Bible, quote, justified the Roman Church in its claim to a divine origin, unquote, and on that basis he was converted to Catholicism. Likewise, Rhodes was not interested in reestablishing the English Empire, the quote-unquote English Empire, as he claimed, but rather the Holy Roman Empire. So the constitutions are talking about building an empire, right? Building a Holy Roman Empire. That's what's embodied in the Jesuit constitutions. And he simply replaced the words Holy Roman Empire with an English Empire to put the onus on England. Now remember, when we talked about Daniel chapter 2, we talked about the four beasts: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And then I even said that we know that the Roman Empire literally started a couple hundred years even before Christ was born. It was the Roman Empire that was in power when Christ was a baby, was born, and it was Herod who tried to kill him when he was an infant. And we know from the prophecy of Daniel chapter 2 that this Roman Empire will remain in existence as an empire in the world until Christ's literal return. So there are four, count them, four, and only four empires in the world from the time of Daniel's prophecy until the time Christ's return. The fourth one is the Roman Empire. Now, could there be a Japanese Empire? No. Could there be a British Empire? No. And there wasn't. They were Roman empires. They were just part of the Roman Empire. And we know this because here it says you replace the words Holy Roman Empire with English Empire. So, if there was an empire, was it not the Roman Empire? That's right. It's bait and switch, but it's still Rome that controls the world. Just a little aside there to keep us biblically oriented when we read some of this stuff. Now it says, as an aside, in my research, the names of the members of the Rothschild family, such as Nathaniel Rothschild and their banking dynasty, kept popping up in connection with various secret societies, political conspiracies, and international conflicts. He says, I say more on this in Volume 2 of the book, and he certainly does, and that book is a valuable book. The title is Codeword Barbelon, Antichrist is a Woman, Alive and Well Again. You get it at Lux Verbi Books. It's the part 2 of this particular book. And it says, coming back to Cecil Rhodes, it says, of the power and pervasiveness of the Rhodes Round Table, another prominent member, Leopold Amory, from 1873 to 1955, later observed, quote, if the vision was Rhodes, it was Milner who, over some 20 years, laid securely the foundations of a system whose power throughout the English-speaking world would be difficult to exaggerate. So we're talking about a secret society envisioned by Rhodes and built by Milner, whose power over the English-speaking world would be hard to even comprehend. Now, this web of secret societies, says Rhodes, should own portions of the press, for the press rules the minds of the people. So here we see again the press being used. And it says, here is a clip from Rhodes' Confession of Faith, which was originally written in Rhodes' own handwriting on June 2nd, 1877 at Oxford. The grammatical errors are in the original, unquote. Now remember, he wasn't a scholar, so he's a little careless with his speech. But anyway, it says, at the present day I become a member of the Masonic order. I see the wealth and power they possess, the influence they hold. What has the main cause of the success of the Roman Catholic Church? The fact that every enthusiast, call it if you like, every madman finds employment in it. Madman, the author writes in parentheses here, this is obviously a veiled reference to Don Quixote or the Jesuit general Ignatius Loyola. Don Quixote was referred to as the madman, and he's a pseudonym for Ignatius Loyola. So it says, the fact that every enthusiast, call it if you like, every madman finds employment in it, let us form the same kind of society. The society should inspire and even own portions of the press for the press rules the minds of the people. The society should always be searching for members who might, by their position in the world, by their energies or character, forward the object. The New World Order. Forward the object. And they're going to use the press. They're going to recruit people of power and influence who will work for their goal of a New World Order. And it says, we are in possession of facts which suggest that the Jesuits have been behind the Rhodes Anglo-American plan, as well as all the secret societies formed under the Rhodes various wills. On pages 34 and 35 of his aforementioned book, Professor Quigley writes, quote, Rhodes, in his first will, written while he was still an undergraduate of Oxford at the age of 24, quote, left all of his wealth to be used to create a secret society patterned on the Jesuits. The reference to the Jesuits as the model for his secret society is found in a confession of faith, which Rhodes had written 2 years earlier in 1875, and which he enclosed in his will. 13 years later, in a letter to the trustee of his third will, Rhodes told how to form the secret society, saying, quote, take the Constitution of the Jesuits, if obtainable, and insert English Empire for, or in the place of, the words Roman Catholic religion, unquote. That's what Quigley tells us. A Jesuit priest tells us flat out what this Rhodes Secret Society is all about, and that its basis is the constitutions of the Jesuits. Now, Quigley's a Jesuit himself. Now, it says, here's a strange set of coincidences. Rhodes was a graduate of Jesuit-controlled Oxford University. He had a plan for world domination, and he based his secret society on the very constitutions of the Jesuits. Reader, Cecil Rhodes was a crypto-Jesuit. So says William Steed, a close friend of Rhodes. He says, quote, Mr. Rhodes was a gray archangel crossed with a Jesuit who was so devoted to his ends that almost all means were to him indifferent, except insofar as they helped him, unquote. In other words, for Rhodes, like the Jesuits, the end justifies the means. The use of the word gray archangel is quite interesting. The Jesuit general is called His Gray Eminence. What is also interesting is that Mr. Rhodes penned his confession of faith in the hours immediately following his initiation into the Masonic order at Oxford University. We shall next see what Mr. Rhodes' aim in creating his web of secret societies really is. Now, more on Rhodes' many wills and secret societies is the subtitle of the next portion of this chapter. And it says, when Rhodes died in 1902, he was considered at the time one of the wealthiest men in the world. As we saw earlier in one of his many wills, Rhodes left a large sum of money with instructions for the establishment of a secret society that would act in furtherance of his aims of recovering America and enabling his hidden power to rule the entire productive world. Kind of reminds you of Revelation chapter 13, doesn't it? And it says, that was his second will of September 19th, 1877, which importantly clarified Rhodes' vision of establishing a secret society, which he said was for the ultimate aim of recovery of the United States. Recovery of the United States. And what would be his object? If he were a pseudo-Jesuit, a crypto-Jesuit, forming secret societies after the constitutions of the Jesuit order, a Freemasonic order to recover the United States. What would they be recovering the United States from? Protestantism. Recovering it for the Pope. That's what this is about. This is all about religion. This is all about raising the papacy to total domination and control in this country. And if you're good at math, you have to realize, given all the history of the Vatican, what they will do to achieve that dominance of the papacy in this country. They will go on an Inquisition just like they ever have in history. And I believe it'll put all the Inquisitions of the past to shame. Now, it says the provisions of that will are in pertinent part as follows, quote, to and for the establishment, promotion, and development of a secret society, the true aim and object whereof the true object whereof shall be colonization, and especially the ultimate recovery of the United States as an integral part of the British Empire. Remember, they replaced the words British Empire for the words Roman Catholic religion. Let me read it the way it's supposed to be read. To and for the establishment, promotion, and development of a secret society, the true aim and object whereof shall be colonization, and especially the ultimate recovery of the United States of America as an integral part of the Roman Catholic religion. And, finally, the foundation of so great a power as to render wars impossible and promote the best interests of humanity. And what would that be? A one-world government where the Pope makes all the laws. And they use this pious idea that the whole purpose of it is to end all wars. What does our Bible say? There be no peace until the Prince of Peace comes. So who is this prince in Rome that they intend to raise to world supremacy? None other than the Prince of War. And war is how they've always achieved their goals. And their primary warriors are the Jesuits and all the subordinate secret societies under their control in the world. We're not headed for peace. We're headed for annihilation. It says, the reader should not be misled about the will's reference to the British Empire, for as we read a few paragraphs earlier, Rhodes instructed Lord Rothschild in his fourth will of June 1888 that he should use the Jesuit constitutions, and wherever the words Roman Catholic religion appeared, it should be replaced with the words English Empire. The question is why? And we'll stop right there and begin our reading tomorrow to answer the question why. It's been my pleasure to host the program for you this morning. Stay tuned for Nicholas Arthur's Cross the Border in good biblical teaching straight from God's holy word, the authorized King James Version of the Bible. I'll see you tomorrow.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.